All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:07. Can I get someone to make a motion to accept the agenda, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. Thank you. Communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Yep, Devin?
Okay, I guess I'll actually stand up and they'll look at me for real. And I knocked over my teacup. Just wanted to say we are going to be holding our career day again this year on March 7th and wanted to extend an invitation to the board to come. I have some flyers for you. This year it's divided up into 3 sections essentially. The first section is 4 sessions of career-oriented exposure for our middle school, half hour each. Then we have our Pathways Fair, which is going to be a series of local and non-local entities to show students how they can get from OV to wherever their futures may take them, from apprenticeship to college to basically any different route that they might want to take, also informative in general. And then our final one is we're working currently to add a new feature this year, which will be a keynote speaker, which will be hopefully a notable OV grad to inspire our students. That'll be for the whole school, and we'll be giving you more information. Also, asking for a little bit of help. We had good turnout last year in spite of a late season snowstorm. However, we're always trying to expand our participants. So if you I have your invitation here with a little bit of information, and the QR code takes us to our presenter sign up. If you or anyone you know, including our administrators and central office staff here, if you would like to come, Lori was a presenter last year. We really appreciated that. And if you are interested in potentially or know someone who you're like, oh, this person would be a great addition and would really inspire the kids, pass on the QR code or the shortened URL for them to sign up, and I will reach out to them in January. And hope that you guys can make it, and I'll pass these out, and that's all. Unless there are questions or...
Perfect. Thank you, Devin. It was very fun last year, actually, I will say. So looking forward to it this year. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the board? Thank you. Alicia.
Hi, so I guess I just wanted to make a comment that I think it's, I know it's been confusing for me, and I know for other people, like the RNESU versus OVUU.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's typical, like if this is also illustrative of it, that there's less people
Oh.
at RNESU. I don't know if that usually is the case.
So what I will tell you is that RNESU is the superintendent, is the supervisory union,
Yep.
which is made up of our 2 districts, Otter Valley and Barstow.
Right, okay.
So RNESU had the member districts, which are 2, send 3 representatives to that board, to the RNESU board. So
Okay.
that's why you only see 6 of us here as board members, although 2 of our board members are currently online.
Yeah, okay.
So and one of our board members is not here tonight.
All right,
But
yeah.
so that's why there's less people.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
all we deal with is the main stuff, like the special ed, transportation, food service, curriculum. I'm missing a couple. Curriculum, special ed, transportation,
Business,
and
finance,
and admin.
technology, pre-K.
Well, right, yes, we have pre-K. Yes, we
Yeah.
do the pre-K stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's what we do, and then we divvy that out to the
Yep.
2 districts based usually on the weighted average thing,
Okay.
that ADM, LT, whatever,
Yeah.
that
okay.
thing. Does that
Yeah,
help?
I guess I was just wondering, like, what kind of maybe outreach could be done to the towns that are affected. That I think when people are concerned about the budget or anything, they come
Sure.
to the OVUU meetings, but don't necessarily know that
That
they should probably
sometimes
be
you
coming
need
to
to come
this
to
one
the-
as well.
Sure,
So-
sure. So, yeah, so we'll try and work on that.
So what I would say people need to understand is if they look at the OVUU budget, which
Yep.
is the one they're concerned with, they'll see a big chunk of it is called the assessment for RNSU.
Okay.
An assessment's a fancy word for tax, and that's the percentage of the OVUU budget that goes to pay for all the things that were just mentioned.
Okay.
But once the RNSU board approves that, it's untouchable for the constituent boards.
Okay.
So if people want to influence, for instance, people talk a lot about administration. If they want to influence that decision-making, they have to come to this board because the OVU board is going to say, we can't touch it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then I do have two questions about the budget, but I don't know if you'd rather me wait till it's on.
So what I'm gonna tell you is that I am not gonna take this is the time for public
Okay,
comment.
yep.
So if you have questions, ask them now and we'll hopefully
Okay.
address them during the budget.
Sure,
part.
yeah. I mean, well, first, I guess I'm hoping that you keep preschool as is based on,
That's what we said last night,
Presented,
so that's
so,
the plan.
okay.
Yep.
and then I guess I just was
Unless they're
hoping,
gonna
to see if you'd reached out to the state. I'm wondering if it's, jumping the gun to hire a data manager when the state right now is doing the Commission on the Future of Public Education in Vermont, and they might be doing that, and it could be redundant.
So we'll see about that when we get to that part in the meeting, but thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have a qualifying question, I guess.
Sure.
Was there a second version of the budget made available? Because I did not see it.
Well, for the RNESU budget tonight, we haven't seen it yet. I believe that's why Brenda's not here yet. She's probably doing
Okay.
finishing touches.
And so your intent is to vote on a budget that wasn't warned at all?
Well, first of all, RNESU doesn't need to warn a budget because it is, no, seriously, it doesn't. It's a supervisory unit. So the budget that gets voted on is the OVUU budget. That one needs to be warned because that's what and so that includes the assessments from RNESU.
You don't view it as a problem to not have a version of the budget out for the public to view before this meeting, when you're going to vote on it?
No, because it is part of the OVUU budget and you will see it there. And that's when you vote on it.
After it's already passed from here and you can't do anything about it?
It's always, so I'm just gonna tell you that it's, not that this is the right answer, but it's always been done that way. And I could probably find statute that says that we don't have to warn the RNESU budget because it is not something that the voters vote on. They only vote on it through the Otter Valley budget, which is the assessment piece.
I think as just a common courtesy and being transparent with our community, having a version of the budget that's available to be viewed ahead of time in case somebody did want to come here and ask questions. I can't even believe we're having this conversation, to be honest with you.
Okay. Duly noted. All right. Anything
I
else?
want to add to
No,
that.
no,
No?
no.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Can't answer the question?
No, see, remember, public comment is when they talk and we don't. Thank you. There is one other, communication that I wanted to, let the RNESU know. The, mom could not be here tonight, so she asked that I tell everyone her thoughts. 1 second, sorry. Here it is. So this is from a Barstow mom about pre-K. She is interested in having a 4-year-old pre-K program at Barstow. And she was hoping that the RNESU board would talk about it. Apparently they're gonna have a 4-year-old for next year and they were looking for a 5-day program, instead of the current 3 days that Barstow provides. So, we will talk about that during the budget piece, I suppose, about if that is, if we want to do that. It would be a change in the way preschool is run, and I'm not sure that we want to do anything about that, but we'll bring that up when we talk budget tonight. But that is, she could not be here tonight.
And we'd have to change policy to order to do it.
That's right, and so I don't know that we'll be doing that, but bringing it up during public comment. Is there anything else that anyone else would like to bring up for public comment at this time? Okay. Consent agenda. Can I get someone to make a motion, please?
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Kevin. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Next on our agenda is a presentation by Tyler on the overview of school safety. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Are you able to, Renee, so I can share my screen, or are you doing that?
I'm doing it.
Okay. I'll just take
Gotcha.
switch slides. Okay. So if you want to go to the first slide there, next one. So yeah, you can just click all of them through. There's 4 of them. So I'm changing things up on the presentation tonight. Originally, I was planning on going through everything that we normally do. However, what I decided to do tonight is put you through the training I do for staff. So you can see what staff do and see what they interact with. So things that happened over the summer of work and this fall is probably the biggest thing here, biggest lift was something I hope we never have to use. Is that first one is sudden death and suicide toolkit. Myself and 2 colleagues went to Prepare training last April, and Prepare training is essentially the mental health side of emergency operations plans. And what we got from that was a whole slew of things, but one of the biggest things is this, the Utah State Board of Education put out, and that's where we were for this training in Utah, put out this toolkit, and I adapted it for us, and essentially what it is, it lays it out, day 1, day 2, day 3, what's going on in the school if there's a sudden death or a suicide. Also, the greatest thing about that toolkit is it gives us scripts. So it gives us, if we have information from the family, what can we share? If we don't have information from the family, what can we share? So it really enables, it's a step-by-step checklist for our staff members to go through and for us to figure out what we need to do to support our community, our families, our students, our staff. Okay. Second thing there is a classroom clear procedure we'll put into place this year. Sometimes classrooms have to be cleared for a variety of situations. What we did with this new procedure is we really specified what the criteria should be, and what that criteria is: any kind of threat to body or self, or to the kids in the building, or excuse me, in the room. We can clear a classroom that way. It can't just be, Johnny is acting up and he's not sitting in the seat he's supposed to be in. It has to be an imminent threat for us to clear that classroom, because if you think about the disruption to learning that happens when you clear a classroom. Now, obviously, our teachers have the ability to call that if they need to. Ultimately, administrators would get there and clear the classroom if they need to, and have the other students go to another place. So again, another very clear procedure for how our administrators and staff can work with our kids and when they're having a tough time. Another thing we did this year, and this is for part of Brian's team, Brian Crane, is we have all of our psychologists who are usually housed in central office, had offices there, are now in the buildings. Their permanent offices are there, and they serve as our point people now. That if there is a mental health crisis, they are the point person in that building to then take charge and say, I need this, that, whatever from central office to come into that building and help out with that situation. So if something were to happen in one of our buildings, let's say Lothrop, Mike Wood is our point person there for Lothrop. He would call me and say, I need these resources, and I would implement that from our rest of our staff in our district. So that's something that's been very positive in there. They're out and about with our kids on a daily basis now, so that's really been something that all of our principals said has been a very positive move. And the last thing there is HHB. Sorry, I know in education we have a lot of acronyms. So HHB stands for hazing, harassment, and bullying. And then Title IX is sexual harassment. So those investigations, probably about 6 weeks ago, I started talking with our principals, and our principal's number one job. Does anyone know what that is in their job description? Any idea? Instructional leadership. That is the number one job of a principal. And myself, I was a principal before I came here, and I know that on a day-to-day basis, so many things are thrown at you that it's really hard to be an instructional leader in a building, because you have to manage the building, you have to manage the staff, you have to manage the kids. So in that regard, I took upon myself, I started talking specifically here, because the load is so much more here for student behavior, is I went and worked with Michael Ruppel and said, hey, I'm going to come in, when you think you need to have an investigation that needs done, I'll come in and do that for you. So that now I find myself in the buildings doing a lot of investigations, so our principals can work on proactive behavior and instructional leadership. And the paperwork that's involved with HHB investigations, typically it's required for a 5-day time frame from start of investigation to end. So that means figuring out what's going on to some kind of conclusion is 5 days. Title IX is substantially a longer and more arduous process. Those are typically 60 to 80 to even 90-day processes.
The first night of Hanukkah falls on Christmas Day. Hanukkah is celebrated over 8 nights in honor of the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem. The dates change.
It's not part of my presentation.
It's a nice little segue.
Yeah, so, that is something I'm finding that's taking up a lot of time, but again, it's helping our principals do what their main focus is supposed to be. So we want to go to, sorry.
One real quick aside. So the top one is really, even though I wasn't here for it at the time, that is really important to me as a superintendent to make sure as many people as possible have access to that training. As a principal of a really big school that had a lot of students and a lot of mental health issues, and including multiple deaths a year, this was something that we had to make sure that my administrative staff and others were very aware of it. And so I went through the training several times, and so that's important on the campus. But when I became an assistant superintendent over human resources, and things would come to me, and we'd have to do welfare checks on employees, that was something that also came into play for me, and I was able to address the mental health of our employees that way. So that's not just something that we're going to be using in our schools, but it's a skill and an ability that we'll be able to take out into the community as well.
Okay, so drills and safety protocols, those three are our primary focus. So I Love You Guys Foundation is on the back of all of our staff. You can see on Renee's if you want to go real close. That's called the SRP, Standard Response Protocol, that the I Love You Guys put out. It's a foundation of a husband and wife. They lost their daughter in a school shooting some time ago. I went to their training last year, and the first day recounts the entire experience of that process of that day. And I don't want to be too much of a downer, but it's called I Love You Guys because that's the last text they got from their daughter. And she was killed in that school shooting. It was in Colorado. But amazing training, and it's all the protocols we follow for our safety drills. Alice is another part of another resource we use for Run, Hide, Fight. It's another, again, system that we can follow for school safety. And then the Vermont School Safety Center is a great resource for all schools in Vermont. They do a lot of training, especially around behavioral threat assessments that several people in our district are trained to do. But they're, again, a great resource. If you have any questions, you can always contact them, and they always are very quick to give some feedback and some information for us. So, if you want. So the thing here is with staff, a big thing is see something, say something. We need to make sure our staff are comfortable with pointing out things that just don't look right. If we have a lockdown, keeping our doors locked. There has never been a breached classroom with a locked door in a school shooting, ever. So, and that's something that I'm looking at also as a project in our buildings to look at our locking systems. Again, it's a wish list, but it's something we're still looking into because it, again, number one cause or number one safety feature for in a school shooting or emergency situation. Another thing there is act quickly and trust your instincts. I always tell staff that. If you think you hear something, act on it. Every single one of our staff members can call a lockdown through the PA system. Every single one. And part of the Alice training I did last year was you heard a series of gunshots, a couple audio clips, and you had to guess was it a gunshot or not. They all were. Some didn't sound like it, but it's amazing what a falling of pots and pans can be close to a gunshot. So again, I know I'm focusing on school shootings because that really is the scariest thing out there for us, but there are still a whole variety of different things we have for emergency situations. And then here's something also talking with our staff about countering. Age appropriate at first. We have to make sure that we're not telling our pre-Kers and kindergartners and first and second graders, we expect you to go up and counter against an armed individual or intruder of some sort. But I don't see any. Well, actually, I do. How many of those water bottles are in our classrooms? A ton, right? And they weigh a lot. So part of countering is causing a disruption. If you can knock someone off their game or their intentions, again, that's a couple seconds of time you have to react. Okay, so again, throwing stuff at the individual, barricading doors is another thing of making sure we stay safe. So again, a whole myriad of things that we can do when someone comes into a classroom that's an intruder. So if you want, next slide for me. So visitor management, another thing that we employed last year is Raptor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but essentially when anyone comes into the building, a guest, visitor, what have you, they go through Raptor. What that is they take their state-issued ID, passport, and it runs through a system. That system connects to the 50 states sex offender registry, and also it connects to our student management system, Power School, to make sure that that parent is, or that visitor is somehow tied as a emergency contact or a contact for kids for them to be in the building. It prints out a badge with their face on it, so then they wear that as a sticker throughout the building when they're escorted by another staff member. Okay? And that's something at all of our buildings. Holding doors, this is a culture thing that I harp on all the time with all of our staff members. I don't know how many times you walk through a door, you hold the door for the person behind you, right? You do. It's a polite thing to do. Schools, we don't do that. We can't do that. We have to make sure that everyone goes through the proper procedure of walking into a building. So if you're holding the door for someone coming in behind you, one, make sure they're going to the main office, but two, you shouldn't be holding that door. You should be, sorry, I have to close that door, you have to buzz in, and we have to make sure you're going to the right place. And kids are also, when I say culture, kids hold doors a lot too. They want to be respectful and they want to be appropriate for adults, what have you. So we always talk to everyone, kids especially, don't hold doors. Don't prop doors open. Those create holes in our buildings, and we don't want holes in our buildings. And the last thing there is if something doesn't look right, report it. And that is a huge thing. Before we go to the next slide, I have a cheat sheet for you for our next thing. What I always do with the trainings is we go through a scenario. I'm going to quickly go through a scenario with you, but all of our staff, like I said, on their ID badges have our standard response protocol procedures on here, but you don't have them, so I printed them out for you. So you want to take one and go around, because you have a test. So Renee, if you can go to the next slide, I appreciate it. Okay, I will read that to you because it's very small, okay? So, and this is the one, scenario I put together for NESHB. So an employee at New England Woodcraft, and this is completely fictional. An employee at New England Woodcraft was terminated. That employee left the building in an elevated state, however, returned to the building to have words with his supervisor. During a heated exchange, the terminated employee physically assaults the supervisor with an unknown weapon. Several employees at the plant tried to subdue the attacker, however, they were not successful, and the attacker was able to leave the building. After leaving the building, 2 more employees tried to subdue and block the employee from leaving the parking lot. They were successful in blocking the attacker's use of the vehicle. The attacker left the plant on foot, heading south toward Neshabe School. Law enforcement has been notified and made Neshabe School aware of the situation. Now, if you're not familiar with where New England Woodworks is, Neshabe School, it's about maybe a half mile, maybe even less as the crow flies from there north. Okay? So, looking at your cheat sheet, what is Neshabe doing right now?
Secure?
Yep, I think a secure would be great. Now, what a secure is basically, if we have people outside, we bring them in. Okay? We secure our building. It's not a lockdown. We have business as usual. Teachers are still teaching, but we're keeping kids in the building. Okay, Renee, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, it's 8:25 in the morning. The attacker has been seen by residents near New England Woodcraft. He is on foot and running through yards, trying to stay away from the main roads. Law enforcement is approximately 8 minutes out from arriving on scene. Do we change our course of action? What do you think?
No.
Okay, I'm seeing a couple people shake heads. I would say no. We're staying insecure. Okay, next slide, Renee. Okay, approximately 8:29, the attacker is seen by a Neshabe employee in the brick building, running through the staff parking lot toward the main building. Sirens can be heard in the distance. The attacker approaches the 5-6 hallway, exterior door, trying to gain entry into the building. It's 8:30 in the morning. Not being able to enter the school, the attacker unsuccessfully tries to gain entry to the building at the 4-5 hallway exterior door. What are we doing now?
Lockdown.
Yes. We are calling a lockdown. This intruder that we know is potentially armed is on our campus. We know police are coming, but so a lockdown. That means our lights in our rooms are going off, window shades are being pulled, students are barricading the doors to make sure that no one can gain entry to that classroom. Doors are being locked, obviously. Okay? And it's not business as usual. It is, we are scattered around the room, and we are trying to stay secure. Okay? Next slide, please. One more click. There you go. The time is 8:32 a.m. Multiple law enforcement vehicles enter the Neshabie campus. The attacker sees law enforcement officers and runs towards Olivia's. That's the plant just to the south of them, or southwest. And after an extensive on-foot chase, the attacker is able to evade capture and continues to run toward Neshabie Country Club. Does that change anything for us? I would say no. Still in the area. Okay, still, because if you think about Olivia's is our reunification point if we had to evacuate. So they're still in that area. So I would still stay in lockdown. Do you want the next slide for me? One more. There. So the time is 8:40. The attacker is still on the loose. Law enforcement does not believe the school is in immediate danger. However, one patrol officer stays at school while others continue to chase the attacker. Now what are we doing?
Back into secure.
Back into secure. Yeah. We want to go back to as normal as possible. As normal as possible. I see you laughing. So, are we just going back to teaching? No. Sorry, Lori. No. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
We're not going back to teaching. We're going to have to really debrief with our kids. They just went through something traumatic. Our staff went through something traumatic. Most of that rest of that day, depending on what it is, will probably not look as business as usual. We might have a normal day, lunch and recess and that kind of stuff, but we have to really make sure we're taking care of our kids. And that means we're having communication after parents as to what transpired, possible community meetings to talk with our parents, and also pulling in our psychologists from other buildings and our counselors from other buildings to make sure they're available to talk to kids one-on-one or in small groups. Do you want the next slide for me? Probably 2 clicks. One more. Sorry. Okay. So the attacker is seen at 8:52 running across Route 7 near Woods Market. What does that do for Neshabie?
They're a lot farther away.
They're a lot further away, so nothing for Neshabie. We're still debriefing. We're still trying to take care of our kids.
But Otter Valley.
Thank you, exactly. I put that in there on purpose. What is Otter Valley doing now?
They're
Going to
They're
secure.
going to secure, 100%. Okay, so now they're bringing everyone in, and they are making sure that they are tight within the building. Next slide real quick. One more. Okay, so then at 9:01, everything's done. The person's caught near Blue Seal trying to steal a car. Okay. Very real life. This could happen. So that's really the scenario. Then we talk through everything with the staff, kind of different scenarios. What are we doing for kids? What are we doing for staff? What are we doing for our community? But that's really the end of the scenario. Granted, it takes a lot more time. We talk through a lot of different things. But do you have any questions on this? Or anything at all that presented on, or the scenario itself? Or stuff we're doing with kids and staff?
I guess the only thing I would say is that when you go from lockdown to secure, so I was reading what each thing talks about,
Yep.
is that if you've been in lockdown and then you hit secure, secure does say do business as usual.
It does.
So,
Yes.
but I understand the
Yeah.
debrief, so
Yeah.
I just wonder,
Yeah. I mean, secure is more for us to say, we're not letting one outside right now. And business as usual, yeah, that means we can operate as a school inside the
Right.
building,
okay.
but that operation's gonna be very different.
But once once you're emerging from lockdown, the lockdown itself seems like it's a fairly traumatic
It is.
experience. So
Yes.
then you can't really go back to business as usual.
It is,
Okay.
it
And is
is.
that only, well, I would just say, I know you're all scenario, but is it because he's assumed armed? Because I would have said just hold versus lockdown, I mean, in general. But it's
Yeah, I
because you're
mean,
assuming he's armed and
we're
that's why
assuming
you're
he's armed.
scared? Because
Yep.
otherwise I feel like you are risking a big traumatic event to students that's potentially unnecessary.
True. But yeah, we were assuming he was armed. Yeah. And really, anyone's coming on campus that has police coming to them,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we are staying as safe as possible.
And this is all communicated via, is it walkie-talkies that they
Yep,
have?
so all staff
That was
have,
going to be so I also wanted you to describe what's taking place
Yep.
with you and central office and the principal after
So-
you answer her question.
so yeah, when this happens, so yes, this is communications inside the building with walkie-talkie and or email. I know like Michael does all his stuff through email, through the building, to talk to staff members as this is going on a consistent time frame. Michael will get on and say, this is happening in the building, this is what you should be doing, and in 10 minutes, check your email again, because it's gonna, you get an update. So what's happening in terms of once this is happening? Anytime we go into lockdown or a secure, any one of those procedures, I'm notified right away. And then, so I know what's going on, I will talk to the principal and say, do I need to be there for the situation? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And then I'm actively figuring out what resources we need to be there. And then we're figuring out, especially once fire comes on scene or police comes on scene, police comes on scene, they're the boss. But we have something that's called unified command, so that when basically everyone's got their own leader into a group, which is called unified command. So in that situation, I would be part of that, either the principal or myself would be part of that unified command. They're gonna be asking questions of, when I say they, usually law enforcement, would be asking questions of us. What do you need here? What's going on with kids? What's going on with staff? So we're feeding them information, fire's feeding information, emergency management is feeding information, all to that one system to make sure we are taking care of everyone as we need to. We are most likely, if that was a situation where the campus is there's a situation on campus, we're creating a roadblock around the school, and that's not something the staff is doing, that's something law enforcement or fire is doing, so that parents are staying out. We're keeping routine communication with parents on a specific time frame. Say, just like with staff, we'll update you in 10 minutes, we'll update you in 15 minutes. And that's either myself or the principal putting out that information.
And is that?
But that is a combined, it's not just, well, you do it, or maybe I'll do it. That's a very specific conversation and specific duty that is given out. It's not just if we figure it out.
And this is also when, I don't know if it's called your 911 system or something, where messages come into parents' phones via various methods.
We would, yes, we would be communicating through ThrillShare, which is our alert system, and that can go out through email, text, and call. So we'd be updating that on a very specific time.
I mean, it's in my experience, it's pretty comprehensive. Like,
It
I'll
is.
get a call on
Yes,
my phone, a
it's-
call on
it's
my
right
work
away.
phone, a text, and it's like,
And
something's going on.
it's 3 little buttons you pick, and as soon as you hit send, it goes to all. Yeah.
It's good.
But these are the things we train for. So just so you know, with school safety, every other month is either a lockdown drill or an options-based drill. Not necessarily lockdown, but options-based. And then what options-based essentially means is just that, you have choice. We give our staff as much information as possible, and then they have that choice to react to keep themselves and their kids as safe as possible. And that might be, if there's something happening in the middle school wing, in this building, and we're in here, we're leaving. We're not, even though someone calls a lockdown, if we know there's an intruder in the middle school wing, we're leaving the building. We're going outside, and we're going to our reunification point, which all the kids trained to do. Okay, so options-based drill is every other month, and the fire drill is every other month. And we're starting to, I'm going to start in the spring, late winter and spring, to make some of our fire drills a little more dynamic.
Usually like a blocked exit or
Blocked
something like that,
exit.
so they're going to have to
Yep.
figure it out.
Yep. And there's something else with fire drills. We always do them during convenient times. So that means during recess for elementary, lunch, high school and elementary, passing times. So again, just to keep people on their feet and keep people thinking about what they can do to keep themselves safe. So any questions at all? Anything else?
I have a question about HHB and Title IX. How frequent are those investigations?
Frequent. Title IX, not as much. Title IX is, there's, this year alone, I think we've had, I'm in the middle of one, we have maybe 4 across the board, but those are very infrequent. HHB, elementary school is not as frequent. High school, ebbs and flows.
If you give me 2 minutes, I can give you numbers.
Yeah, Otter Valley does a great job of keeping a great spreadsheet of those, and I mean, there are days where we can have 4 pop up in a day, and then there's some where I don't want to say it. There's a little bit of a lull going right now, but yes. Go ahead.
81 student conduct forms, 21 investigations, 17 substantiations.
So what that means?
End of November.
So when there's a behavior that happens, staff or building administrator fill out a student conduct form. We want people to report. We want them to report these behaviors. And then from those student conduct forms, we look at the behavior and we decide, given the information we have, to open an investigation or not. We want a lot of conduct forms. We want very few investigations.
Thank you.
Yep.
The other piece I would add to the presentation, going back over here. I don't know where it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. We'll just do it here. Is that we started so every campus has to have a safety committee.
Yep.
So we started our district safety committee as well, so that way we have communications with all of the first responders, fire, police, state police, so that way we can make sure that we're all on the same page if something were to happen. Because we already know that if something large was to happen in the building, we may have communication issues.
Yep.
Because all of our walkie-talkies don't communicate with one another. But by planning ahead, we could make sure that we have the systems in place so that way, when we have the unified command center, we know what's going on, who's in charge, and what the expectations are.
And every building has a walkie-talkie, or will soon, that when, fire EMS show up, so they have the consistent comms that we do, they grab that radio, that designated radio. We also just applied for a grant, maybe about a month ago, that would enable us to buy the same radio, so every single building has the same radio. They can't talk to one another, but they all have the same radio. And Rich and I have looked into what that looks like for us to talk to one another, and that would be a very large investment. Anything else? Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tyler.
And thank you for putting me in front of the order. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, of course. No worries.
Off to a Christmas concert.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. All right. So next, we have a monitoring report, 2.2, treatment of staff. That should be in your packet. Someone want to make a motion to accept?
I move that we accept the monitoring report. Good Lord, where were we?
Monitoring report, 2.2.
2.2, thank you. Treatment of staff, thank you.
All right. Is there a second?
Yep.
Thank you, Ethan. Okay, discussion. Any discussion? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, it's perfect timing because 2.2.3 talks that the superintendent shall not allow staff to be unprepared for emergency situations.
There you go.
So, right, so within,
Thanks, Tyler.
so I need to add this presentation as part of the evidence. But if you go through here, you'll see a lot of information about that particular item, but also it really is, I like it because it's focusing us on providing written personnel rules so that way when we say that we have a policy or a practice, that it's written down somewhere that we can share with others, and if it's no longer working, then we can bring it up and discuss it. Then the second one has to do with the superintendent is not allowed to discriminate against any staff member for non-disruptive expression of dissent. So if people have an opinion about certain things, I need to make sure that there's a certain amount of protective status for that expression of dissent, as long as it's non-disruptive. So that information is included within there as well. And of course, it's always great to have written personnel rules that address those things.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those that accept the monitoring report 2.2 treatment of staff, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? I don't think there's anybody. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're moving on to governance process. We have our own board monitoring report to look at. 3.4, monitoring the superintendent performance, which is in your packet. Is there anything we need to do to adjust this?
Change the dates.
Yep. Other than that, which I'm doing right now. Not hearing anything.
Do you need a motion to approve it or not?
Nope, we just keep moving on. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
How about you, Robin? You're okay with this?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, awesome. All right, moving on. We'll update the dates. Okay, fiscal year 26 budget review. Hi, Brenda.
You guys aren't sick of me yet,
Nope.
Never.
right? The trifecta week. So here are some paper copies.
Thank you.
How skinny that is.
Oh, I was thinking it was going to
Oh, there you go.
break this.
All right, so some of this may be redundant because you have all seen me a lot recently, but I'll just kind of go through where we're at, what we have, what we know. This budget we know a lot more for than we do the other budgets because this budget isn't contingent upon the long-term weighted average ADM. How this budget is shared is contingent on that, but this budget itself is not. It's only, Debbie, I have my back to, I'll move back. No, you're not, you're all good. Beep.
Oh, sorry. You need to move something, sorry.
Thank you, Renee. Just a reminder, this is the budget process and the timeline. We are right in the middle. And the reason why tonight's meeting is important is because this budget feeds into the two-member district budget. So having that information now helps those boards make their final decisions in January. We all know about the CPI trends, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about that anymore. So here we are. Some budget facts. 1% of this budget is $130,000. This budget is $137,000 less than the budget we presented November 2nd. More information has come in and more changes have been made. This budget does include salary cost of living adjustments. And just a reminder again that the teachers and the support staff, which includes paraeducators, drivers, custodians, and bus monitors, are under negotiations, but there is a cost of living adjustment built into the budget. Health insurance premiums, we anticipate going up 11.9%. The statewide commission does not allow us to change the share of those until 2028. So that will always remain an 80-20 split. We pay 80%, the employee pays 20%. Replacing technology hardware continues.
Is that just the state of healthcare in general, that it's just gonna keep going? I mean, there's nothing we can do, but what's that?
There is nothing that we can do. So the state put in a health commission to determine all school health insurance so that it would not be a differing benefit from school to school or even within schools. So a paraeducator, custodian, teacher, business manager, all of them get the same health benefit. The only exception is superintendent. We can change his. Replacing technology and hardware is per our replacement schedule. You'll remember in 2020, we pivoted and made a one-to-one initiative and investment. And it's now building the budget for 2026, so we are in our replacement cycle schedule that we've maintained. It does not include any funds for potential tariffs. We don't know if they're going to happen. They've been promised. We don't really know what that means. But just as an FYI, we did not feel we had enough information to put money into that budget. But if they end up happening as promised, we know that would be $90,000. Again, not included in the budget. We've looked line by line and we've made adjustments for historical spending and estimates for cost of living on things like fuel and electricity and things like that. And then revenues, we are still waiting for a couple of pieces of information. We have put in a placeholder, and these are not huge holes in the budget. I actually usually get that by December 15th. I'm surprised we haven't received it yet.
Just one question, since you were talking about tariffs, if those tariffs come into play, we would adjust what we end up buying, correct?
Or we would talk to you with a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, we would not automatically overspend.
Well, no, I realized that, so I just didn't know if there would be a, okay.
Yeah, would there be a conversation if we had some brilliant ideas, we would share them.
Okay.
So I think sometimes talking about Rutland Northeast budget becomes really confusing because there's really some components of it that I just wanted to take a minute to make sure that we are systematically on the same page. So the biggest component, and the component that we're talking about tonight, I'm going to call the assessment budget. That's the funds and the services that we assess out to member districts. That's important for tonight because we have to put that money, that cost, into the member district budgets. And the services that are covered under that are general fund services by definition. And they are assessed to our member districts. Assessing means it's not a fee for services. It's not like I buy this and I have to pay this. It's a percentage, and it's a percentage based on pupils. And we assess each one of these just a little bit differently because we have some unique things like Barstow is a K-8, so our curriculum at Barstow goes to 8th grade. We don't influence 9th through 12th curriculum. So some of these components of this budget are assessed in different numbers than others. So the budget that this includes is the superintendent's office, curriculum, business office, information technology, including all of the hardware and the software as well as the technicians, human resources, communication, special education. This is the only little piece that does include a couple of federal grants because they are specific to special education and can only be spent on special education. That's the IDEAB grants. There's a little tiny preschool one, and there's a K-12 one. And then transportation services to and from school, not any other transportation services in this assessment budget. And then facilities for the cost of operating the central office building. So not for supervision, but just the cost of maintaining the central office building. Then there's the grants. And the grants are the one that exploded with ESSER, because that's where ESSER fell. But we are back down to normal business as usual. And we have annual entitlement grants. I sometimes refer to them as CFP, Consolidated Federal Programs. And that includes Title I, Title II, and Title IV. We also have Medicaid, which is based on, there's two components of Medicaid. One is Medicaid based on services that we provide through IEPs that we get a reimbursement for. And then the other one is services that our guidance and nurses provide that we get a little bit of money for. And I mean a little bit, $25,000. So we get approximately $700,000. That's the current allocation, $698, I rounded up, for Title I. $180 for Title II, around $100,000 for Title IV, and about $280 for those two little pots of Medicaid. Then there are all these pass-through services. And yesterday when you heard me, and Monday when you heard me showing you the grids and talking about what FTEs belonged in the school versus what FTEs were not on that grid, that's these pass-through services. So we use these pass-through services for services that we kind of say cross the bridge. So if it services Barstow and Otter Valley, for example, and that therefore it kind of crosses the bridge. It includes both of you. It's the best way for the employee to be a whole employee instead of a partial and a partial. So that's the reason for the pass-through services. Excuse me. So what we have this year is we have, in this proposed budget, we have preschool, we have multilingual learner, ELL teacher, we have non-to and from school transportation. So this would include at the high school things like the vocational runs to Stafford and Hannaford, the late runs. It would include every school's field trips or field studies, co-curricular, sports, that all falls through as a pass-through. Vocational transport, I just said it, sorry. And then facility management. And so that's part of Rich and his team. So it's Rich and a full-time maintenance position that is currently open because he's working as head custodian at Otter Valley because we haven't been able to fill the head custodian position. And it does include a little bit of admin assistant for secretarial support, clerical support.
Can I ask a question about?
Certainly.
I'm a little hazy on the concept. Why would something like pre-K, or I'll take the first two, pre-K and ELL, I'm assuming it's because those services are shared between Barstow and OVUU, but I'm not quite.
It is, that is the reason.
Okay.
That is the reason. Actually, I should have had library in there too, because library is also shared. And so it allows us, by hiring as Rutland Northeast, to hire a full-time person versus 2 part-time positions. And that makes it easier for the employee, right? They don't get 2 checks, they get 1 check. It makes it easier for us to be able to find someone instead of, it's challenging enough to let someone know that they have to travel for their job, but to let them know that they're at the risk of getting riffed differently by different entities as well. So it's those that are shared that we use the pass-through for.
Can I follow up on that?
Oh, let me just back up. And the reason we do transportation that way and preschool that way is because the Agency of Education tells us that this board is responsible for it.
That answered my second question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Renee.
So the Medicaid there listed is a revenue, correct? Or is
Well, we spend it too,
Right.
but yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's exactly what we expect to earn in the year, is around 280.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the major changes, and I kind of broke it up into two sides of the house, if you will. I think we spent a lot of time talking about the pass-through at each of your board members, your board meetings earlier this week, so I did not throw them on there because they were included in the conversations at Otter Valley and Barstow's board meeting. So the first one is that sort of assessment budget, the budget that we're talking about tonight, and then the other side is the grant budget. And they are complementary because a lot of times they go like this. A lot of times they're part funded across those 2 platforms. And so they do need to kind of be looked at collectively. So this budget reduces 0.4 instructional coach. That's new since November, and that was through attrition. The current instructional coach is now happily a classroom teacher at RNESU. It reduces 1 SLP, which is an open position. It reduces 1 special educator. It reduces an open paraeducator. And it also reduces 2 out-of-district regular education placements. And so you may recall that we said, when Act 173 came into play, if there are extraordinary regular ed student costs that don't meet the definition of special education, we will centralize them in this budget for management and for funding, and fund them out through assessments, which is what we're doing. We have 2 less next year than we do this year. The additions to this budget, in addition to the things we talked about in regards to health insurance, salary increases, and line-by-line cost of living adjustments, is 1 data manager has been added to the budget, $40,000 for a data consultant, and then we added an additional $50,000 for transportation to look at ways to squeak more time out of the student's day by maybe looking at having multiple runs instead of the high school starting last and ending first. So we put in a placeholder for that. And then, what's the last thing, sorry?
Which would give us more instructional time.
Yes. Which would give us more instructional time, not more teacher time. So, not more contract time, but instructional time. Thank you. And then the last one is a net increase of 1 lease payment, because 2 are coming off and 1 is going on. But I will tell you, the ones that are coming off are a lot cheaper than the ones that are going on nowadays. And just as a reference, so we do have included in this budget replacing 3 new buses. Buses are running around $100,000 now. And last year we did 2 because we thought we had a budget crisis then. And so about every 7 or 8 years we can do 2 instead of 3. We used it last year. So then on the other side, the grants, we are, as we said, if there's no grant for it, we are eliminating the Director of Safety position. We have eliminated the other half of that coaching position that you see over there on the right, so that we can free up funds in the consolidated federal grant to support the academic interventionist, the direct instruction to students. And again, the reason why we need to do that is because we are anticipating that those grants will be level funded, and level funded means we don't have enough money for the cost of living increases for those staff and their benefits. And then just today we had a conversation, and thinking a lot about last night's conversation about our multilingual learning teacher, and recognizing that one of the things we should prepare ourselves for is having more multilingual learners. And because we have only about 8 students now currently being serviced, we thought we would use that position and use grant funds, to some of it offset by the coach above, to split fund that position half and half, so that that position would be able to help regular education teachers integrate and support multilingual learners in their classroom. I have to slow down because that is a tongue tire. So what this would do is, picking up 50% of that, is it would actually push into and reduce Otter Valley and Barstow's budget. $13,500 for Barstow and $54,000 for Rutland, or for Otter Valley. And then I think we talked about this last night. Between Otter Valley's December 2nd and last night's meeting, we had updated information on pre-K, and we are now at the same essentially number of students as we've had and as we currently have. So we are not recommending any changes to the pre-K programs. We are not recommending going to a full-day 4-year-old.
All right, well, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. So let's go back. So one of the questions we heard during public comment was questions about the data manager, and wanting to know, if I have this right, that if they do this at the AOE currently, would this be duplication? And so I'm going to throw that to one of you.
So what I would say is that the AOE is not doing our data right now, and in fact, we have to argue with them about our data as it is. And so that's just for our student information system. That will not do it will not do the services of making sure that our individual teachers have the individual assessment, discipline, and other data that is needed for them to make daily decisions.
Thank you.
It was an agency of education I was concerned about, the legislature commission.
Oh, legislature, right, okay, but it's still the AOE,
It's a 2-year independent study.
but it hasn't finished yet, right?
No, but that's why I'm wondering if the board has reached out to find out if it's covering the whole state, so I'm wondering
Okay.
if it's still duplication.
I don't know.
I can answer that.
Okay.
What will come out of the Future of Education Commission will be, if you get a chance to look at the PICUS report that they've already put out originally, the 10 categories that they're expecting us to be able to do already is to have decisions made on data. And so, given the I guess the spirit of local control, they're not going to tell us how to do it, but they're going to expect us to do it. And so they won't be giving us the additional, it'd be another unfunded mandate, is what I'm trying to say.
Can you tell me what information you're going to get? What are you looking for with this position?
So, number one, we need to make sure that our data is correct.
Data?
Anything having to do with a student, because right now we have the responsibilities of this particular position lives in a lot of different people, so nobody owns it. So we're having to frequently correct our information, which costs us additional time, additional money. Additionally, we want to make sure that our teachers, our families, our students, our administrators, our board have the most up-to-date information about our students. Right now, it is really difficult to produce a report on academics, to an extent on discipline, and we can get you the information right now, but it'd be really hard to be able to explain to where we came from and be able to say, we're able to say that our data looks like this because this is where we were in the past. And so it's going to be an essential piece for us moving forward. For me, it's also going to give us the ability, when we come for the budget in fiscal year 27, that all the information that this board and the community could want, we will be able to provide it in a way that is really pushing us to make sure that we are guiding our school district in a way that is benefiting our students at a cost that our community will support.
So this person has a business background specifically as an analyst? Is that how?
Well, we'll have the job description is finished. We're getting ready to send it out to the principals for review. And then if this budget moves forward, it'll be posted. So the idea is that this person knows how to not only make sure that the data is correct in a very large warehouse, but also that they have the ability to run reports. They could have a business background. They could have an associate's or a bachelor's in computer science. They have that level of capability to be able to do the analysis.
So they're going to, and then the 40% for consultants?
We'll get there. I mean,
Say that one more time.
The 40% for consultant, is that what? I don't know.
the data consultant services she's asking about.
So it's one thing to have a person who's making sure that our data is correct, but I've got 500 people that need to be trained in how to be able to use that data. Because if I just give it to them, they may not know how to use it. And so it's really important that if we are providing a service, we're also providing the necessary training so that way we know how to make sure that our teachers' knowledge, our principals' knowledge can look at that and then be able to translate it into next steps.
So they would be using a software program, I imagine.
The
that
consultant?
does data analysis.
The consultant or the data manager?
The data manager.
Well, they would use the stuff that we have right now, but they would be able to use it full-time as opposed to interstitial.
What exactly do you use right now?
I'd be happy to talk to you offline with that information, because,
Okay, that's fine.
and be happy to talk to you about that so we can continue this.
Yep.
I want to add that as a non-data guy, one of the things I've learned slowly in this position is how much of our questions are data questions. Who's not graduating? Who's failing sixth grade science tests? Which kids don't show up at school? Who's getting in trouble? All of those questions are illuminated with data. I found that we had a presentation a couple of meetings ago on demographics and what to expect in the next 5 years.
Right.
Very helpful.
Right.
Even though I'm sort of been trained my whole life to distrust data as it's something that's easily manipulated, I'm starting to come around. That because we talk about things in a circular manner so frequently, how can we help the most disadvantaged kids and things like that? Getting some numbers to it often offers an opportunity to understand the problem in a way that you can begin to address it in where you couldn't before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. One of the things I also want to add too is that in our presentations to both of the other boards, we talk about how we need to be able to tell our story. And so tell the story of the supervisory union. I want to make sure that every student in our district has their stories told. And so in order to do that, we need to make sure that we both have quantitative data and qualitative data from the students, from the teachers, and from the families, so that way when we're charting a budget, when we're charting all of the things that we need to do for our continuous improvement plan and other things, that we have a place to start from. And so, and I think that just being able to listen to everybody and then being able to look at everybody's input is key, because we make a lot of choices in the district, and those choices are frequently affected by what we know, our experience, our bias. I want to make sure that we involve all of those things in our decisions, but we also have data too. And right now, it's really difficult to access all of the data we need, so we rely heavily on our experience, our knowledge of the area, and our bias. And so I want to make sure that we can continue to use those, but we got to have something else too.
Let's just talk about the pre-K, since you said there's no changes to it. I did indicate about the Barstow parent who, I believe they came to your Barstow meeting on Monday night, and requested that Barstow have a 4-year-old 5-day program, and that we do currently have a policy that says that students, 3 and 4-year-olds will get 10 hours of pre-K a week, right?
It's a law.
Right, it's a law, but it's also a policy. We do that too. And so she's asking us to look at the policy and change that. Only for Barstow, I think. And so from that standpoint, from my standpoint, I think if we were to entertain that idea, first of all, I would look to both of you to tell us if we could do that in all of our schools, because it's not equitable to just do it in one. And if we were to do that, how does that displace our 3-year-olds?
So I'll take a stab at that. Our 3-year-old, so if we were to extend an all-day 4-year-old program, we would have space problems at Neshabie, and Neshabie has 2 programs. Unless we displaced our 3-year-olds and had our 3-year-olds go to vouchers. And as we spoke last time, we are pretty confident that there are not enough spaces in our neighborhood for vouchers. That was one of the reasons why we knew we had to keep our programs operating, because we knew we would not be able to service all of our, we were confident that the neighborhood, the South Ed North, so from Middlebury to Rutland, doesn't have excess capacity in universal pre-Ks to take our students.
Okay.
So while Barstow might have site space available, Lothrop would have site space available. Neshabie would only at the sacrifice of 3-year-olds. Whiting would at the sacrifice of 3-year-olds. And unless you really wanted to expand it to hold 3-year-olds as well in addition to that, I mean, I haven't costed that out, but it would be a lot, because you would have to have two full-time teachers at Neshabie, 1 at Whiting, 1 at Barstow, and 1 at Lothrop. That's 5. You currently have 4.6, but then you would have to pick up either vouchers for 3-year-olds at $4,000 each, or also provide 3-year-old programs probably at 60%, maybe at 40% per site.
So let me ask this question.
And you'd have to hire staff to do that.
All right, so let me ask you this question. The legislature, of course, and just refresh me because I don't remember, a couple of years ago was tooting the fact that they wanted to go to a full-day 4-year-old program, and we were kind of all freaking out about that. How close is that to coming to fruition? I think they've backed off from that.
They have backed off on
Okay.
that. So we received 2 reports from legislative committees in this last week. One was on preschool. And if you had asked me a year ago what I predicted that to be, I would have predicted that to be a recommendation for legislation for all-day 4-year-olds. I think they really were at that point. Last year's budget, and Act 127 fiasco, for lack of a better word, I think switched things. And this year, their recommendation came in pretty soft, as saying, you should continue to look at this. You should continue to also service 3-year-olds. You should continue, and they didn't say full day, they said you should look at expanding 4-year-old. You should continue to support 3-year-olds. We should look at the weighting in the long-term weighted average daily membership, the pupil count, because if you expand the program, you should be able to reap the benefits of that. So they said, look at the weighting, and then, what was the last thing they said? Oh, look at how we pay private providers differently. So it was a pretty weak response.
Okay.
The other thing that would be something to consider if we did vouchers for 3-year-olds and had a full day 4-year-old program would be that we would have much less capacity to identify students at the 3-year-old level for any needs. Not that we wouldn't attempt to, but they wouldn't be coming into our schools as easily, so.
Right, and getting services is not as easy as snapping your fingers and saying, oh, they have a need, and
Because
getting.
even though Sarah does her best to do all of that, it's still, we identify them, and then the family has to try to get to our schools to get the services.
With the state, let's say we did have a full-day program for either 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds, would the state compensate us fully at 1.0
Not
for every
currently.
student, or they'd only still pay us 0.4 or whatever it is?
So we currently offer a 3-day program, or 18 hours a week for our 4-year-olds and 12 hours a week for our 3-year-olds, and we do not get additional funding. We still get funding as if we had a 10-hour-a-week program. For those of you who are as old as I am, you'll remember that existed when the standard was a half-a-day kindergarten, and many of our schools were in the forefront of going to full-day kindergarten, and we didn't get the benefit of that through the enrollment either. So that was one of the recommendations, but again, it was like, oh, and by the way, you should also look at the weighting study and adjust it. But none of them came out as, a real, I don't know if they had the authority to make a directive to the legislature, but nothing came out as a strong statement to the legislature to do X, Y, and Z. And I think we were really hoping that they would come out and say something like that a year ago.
One other question, and I don't know what my question is that, we're getting kids into school sooner and sooner, which is good to identify needs and whatnot. But is it really a good idea to have 4-year-olds having a full day program? When our kindergartners come home and they sack out at 6 o'clock because they, all day program,
Fall asleep on the bus.
Right, fall asleep on the bus, those kinds of things. I guess I just wonder from your standpoint, is it really good for them to have that?
Yeah, so I taught preschool for a lot of years, and 5 days is a long week for 4-year-old children. It's a long week. So we're really providing childcare at that point, because there is a rest period. There's there's a lot involved in order to do it well, and to give them what they need, there's a lot involved in that.
Right, and currently our 4-year-olds have 3 full days of school.
Yeah, and that's a good balance.
3 6
It's a
hour
good balance.
Right, well, yeah, okay.
So 3
It's a good
6-hour
balance.
days, not
Okay.
childcare days.
No, right, okay,
Right.
okay.
Right, so it's a good balance with the 6 hours, because it's not quite a full day.
Sure.
But yet it's also not 5, it's not 5 days.
Okay.
Because I think that's the challenge, is that for families is that it's still not a full school day, so that's challenging. But also, when you do go to that, I know when I worked for Department of Defense, 6 hours is what the full day was a 6-hour program.
So I want to ask the other board members what their thoughts are on this. I don't think that we're ready to increase our budget for next year to have a 4-year-old program, full day, all day program next year. But I just would like what your thoughts are on this. I mean, maybe we can think about it in future years, but again. Okay.
No action.
Yeah, I mean, just contemplating 5 full days for 4-year-olds, yeah.
It just seems like
It's
a
a
lot,
lot.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kevin?
I agree. I especially since Ethan said what he said. And this initiative seems to be coming from Barstow at the moment, that I have no desire to change anything.
Okay, and Robin, what about you?
I echo the sentiments. I don't feel like it's time to change that, and I do feel like it's a long time for a 4-year-old.
Okay. Okay, so I thank you all for your thoughts on that. Okay, so sorry, we'll let you keep going with your budget.
Okay.
Okay.
I gotta have my Vanna move quicker.
Sorry.
Just kidding. Okay, so the total budget, I did give you the papers in front of you. The current budget is $13,025,000. This proposed budget is $13,720,000. It's just shy of a $700,000 increase, or 5.34%. Just reminding you that the first draft was 6.4, and the reductions are 137,707. So this, just like your other budgets that you've seen, kind of looks at it in a different fashion. The numbers are the same. If you look at the difference column way over on the right, the regular ed to the direct instruction is down because of the students, the extraordinary students that, the extraordinary regular ed students that are no longer in our district is a savings. Special education is increased. Again, that would be all of special education. So that's salaries and benefits and contracted services. That has increased $451,000. The next biggest increase is down in fiscal services. Fiscal services includes all of the technology purchases. And so that's the salaries and benefits of the business office staff, technology staff, and the actual hardware and software equipment purchases throughout the district. And then transportation is really the two biggest components of that increase are the additional salaries for, or I'm sorry, salaries are, the additional salaries for the $50,000 and the new bus lease. And if you kind of look at it from an objects, what are we buying? Where are we spending our money? Of the just under $700,000 increase, $430 is going to salaries. That's the FTEs that we've talked about. There's more slides I'll go over on that. Our benefits, which the biggest benefit is health insurance. To put it into perspective, the health insurance, our share of health insurance for a family plan is $38,000. The purchase service, then the next kind of going down the list are just nominal increases. Purchase services are things like electricity, and they are based on cost of living. And then kind of continuing down the capital expenditure, of course, that's the difference for the increase in the new bus lease. And this one's just a little bit harder to look at, but it's by fund. And the reason why funds are important for me is because when we assess this out to member districts, we use different rules. So the general fund, for example, is assessed based on pre-K through 12 at Otter Valley, but pre-K through 8 at Barstow. Again, they don't have curriculum and technology and those type of things in Barstow's K-8 environment. Triple E, special education are both funded the same, pre-K through 12 for both organizations. Transportation is funded the same, but it's K through 12 for both organizations because we do not do preschool transportation. And then IDEA-B and IDEA pre-K, that is the current grant. And so the reason why they've gone down is because that's the current grant money. Used to have some carryover monies that we don't have anymore.
Can you explain the special ed for the Barstow 9th through 12th grade that are tuitioned out? How do we provide special services for them?
Brian
For special
does.
ed? He does.
He
So
does.
he follows those students.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
we reimburse
Sometimes we send people, sometimes we do it, yes.
as a
there's-
reimbursement. I didn't know that.
Yes, yes, that's all incorporated, it's a good question. That is all incorporated into our budget, is Barstow's pre-K through 12 special
Okay.
ed's cost. So now just kind of talking about the central office, this is I keep wanting to say flow chart, but organizational chart. And I think my friend Renee is going to do some magic. The ones in blue are the ones that are at the central office. The ones that are not in blue are in schools and at schools and directly involved in supporting students. And so this is, again, taking a look at the assessment component of our budget. And there's so many questions on this. I was trying to find a way to help break this down so that people could understand what they were looking at, instead of saying or believing or thinking that central office is all administration. It isn't. So when you take a look at the FTEs, there are administrators, there are 10.6 of them. There are support staff. This is bookkeepers, secretaries, bus drivers, custodians, paraeducators, bus monitors. Those are all the support staff. The teachers, those are our special education teachers, our speech language pathologist, our school psychologist. So overall, the Rutland Northeast budget has a projection of 2 FTE reduction, and that's because of special education. We reduced 3 positions and then we added the data. So the net is 2. Go to the next slide. So these are the administrative positions. So there is the assistant superintendent to curriculum instruction and assessment. She gets to be first because I forgot her last time. Where'd she go? But also she gets to be first because numerically her department is first. The superintendent, the HR coordinator, myself, my assistant director, the technology director, the EEE coordinator, who is also the pre-K coordinator. The admin, SPED admin at Neshabie, we have a on-site Neshabie coordinator for special education. The next one is an on-site coordinator at Otter Valley. The next one is Brian, special education administration, and transportation, as you can see, is partial, and that's Rich, our transportation coordinator. The other part of him is doing facilities through the pass-through budget. So I know this is hard to read, but again, this is just kind of showing you from support staff to what's included in support staff. So there's clerical positions and school and secretaries, administrators, or administrative assistants, bookkeepers, communication coordinator, the data manager salary that we've talked about, the technicians, we have one of them here today, thank you, Colby. Our custodian, it's such a tiny little position, 0.1875, that's because that's only at the central office building. I think it's 1 hour a day, or maybe it's 2. The instructional, the pre-K paraeducators, the Bruce Academy educators. I don't need to read the rest of the line, but I'm just trying to help identify kind of the differences between what truly is administration and what is other services. Of course, these are all of our special education teachers, and that first line is the reduction in the
Coaching.
Thank you. And I also showed you what the grant budget looks like. And just to remind you, the grant budget drafts, the actual building of the budget, can't completely happen until we get our allocations from the Agency of Education. We don't get those allocations usually until the end, close to the end of the spring, sometime April, but most often May and June, mid-May, sometimes early June.
Explain what SWP is.
School-wide plans. So school-wide plans is a wonderful function. We are allowed to consolidate our Title I, Title II, and Title IV funds if we use a school-wide plan. And the reason why that's beneficial is without consolidating them, we're restricted to using the funds according to their rules and regulations. But when we consolidate them, we're allowed to use any of the title rules and regulations. So it provides us with a lot more scope and services for students than doing Title I only at Title I schools, only for Title I identified kids. We can instead put them in there and do it for all kids in that school.
And these are all grant-funded positions.
These are all grant-funded positions.
Okay.
Is the Medicaid paid for out of the Medicaid?
Yes.
Administrative, okay.
These are the pass-throughs. Again, I think I kind of talked them to death, but they're there for your reviewing pleasure. And so here's something we need to talk about. So the Rutland Northeast audit has been finalized. It is on the website. It comes up on our schedule at some point later. But in it, this is an excerpt from it, and there is a link to it. In it, there are unassigned fund balance forward of about $303,000 sitting in the general fund. You, as this board, have the ability to assign that. If you go to the next slide. Medicaid. I don't know if you can see this or not, so I'm going to read it to you. This is, again, from the audit report, and I cut it to try to make it big for you, but I wanted to tell you that it is in the audit report. It is Schedule E, and it is page 81 for anyone who is interested in seeing the full report.
Try to make it bigger.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is 2024 last year. We collected, or we earned, and billed and got paid for $311,000 of Medicaid services based on our IEPs and the work that our special educators do. We spent $516,000. Right? So we can see that this is going south quickly. If you scroll down a little bit, so we had a deficit, if you will, of $250,000. We started the year with $500,000 available, so that was part of the reason why it was okay to have that deficit. We have done things to alleviate that deficit. We have reduced services, you heard me talk about it last night, so that we're not spending as much as that $516 in the future. But we're also not earning as much as we used to. There's a couple of reasons why we're not earning as much as we used to. One of the biggest reasons is any special education teacher who's on a provisional license is not allowed to bill for Medicaid services. So our Medicaid reimbursements, our Medicaid revenues are going down. So we started this year with $284,000 in the bank, if you will. So we started at $284,000. We anticipate spending about $350,000. So we're kind of doing a little bit of pay and go, which makes your business manager nervous. You go to the next slide, Renee.
Yes, let me
Thank you.
get it small again so I can find the. Oh, well, here, let me. That's still too big.
So, as an FYI, where did the unassigned really come from? I assumed that would be the question you would ask. And I wanted you to know that the majority of that $303,000 unassigned was one-time monies that we get from ESSER funds because we have an indirect rate. And so what that means is we applied to the state to say, we want to take some of these funds to cover the indirect cost associated with monitoring the grant, but we didn't add staff to cover that. So that is, of that 303,000, 247,000 or 250,000 was one-time money that we got. I would like you to think about transferring some of that to shore up Medicaid so that we can continue to provide with security the mental health services that our students need. Just as an FYI, in the bottom part of that little grid that's in red, we will go back to and continue to expect about $50,000 to come in to support or reduce our assessments, but with indirect rates from our federal programs. And as we had talked before, those federal programs are recurring and continue to happen every year.
How much, how much would would you recommend that we shore it up with?
The whole thing, I would think.
Or make it even, 300.
Well, what would you do with the other unassigned amount? Would it just go forward?
Yeah, it would just be yes, I would recommend that you do the whole thing. If that made you uncomfortable, I'd ask you go to like the 250. Otherwise, it would reduce the assessments a little bit.
So, do you have a question first? Sorry.
No.
All right. So here's my question. We have never seen this before. I mean, as far as you showing us that there's an unassigned amount, does this happen on a regular basis?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. I've never seen it.
No, this is an ESSER fund thing.
Okay. So, because I was under the assumption that if there's ever any money in RNESU,
it goes back
to Otter Valley and Barstow.
Yes, if you want to clip back a few pages, Renee, if you wouldn't mind. This page.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So, you can see the special education column of that 775. That's all going back.
Okay.
So normally, in normal operations,
it just
right, and that 15,000, that's what you had budgeted.
Okay.
To go back.
To go back.
So, so the full 775 was assigned because we knew we were going to roll that in.
Right.
It was this ESSER indirect rate.
Okay. So, all right. So this is kind of like but this is the first time that we've ever, Medicaid has not covered what we have spent.
Right.
Right.
So Medicaid, we have gone from where your business manager was concerned because we had too much Medicaid.
Yep.
Back in the days of John Casso, we were sitting on like $1 million in Medicaid, and that felt wrong too. And so we would add services, and we would add mostly Medicaid is restricted in how we use it. It has to be used for prevention and intervention services.
Sure. Yep.
And so we would add services that met that need, and we were slowly bringing it down. Then ESSER hit, and Medicaid was really needed, and mental health services were really needed. We really tapped into it a little bit stronger. And now we're at the point where your business manager is worried that it's...
So you were talking about how provisional teachers cannot bill back to Medicaid. Do you have any idea how many of our provisional teachers will be no longer provisional teachers going forward so that we would be able to bill for them? I don't know. If you don't have that information,
Debbie's looking it up.
Okay.
Debbie's looking it up. A couple of things to let you know. The reason we have provisional teachers is because there's a shortage in teachers.
Right, we know that.
And the provisional teachers have 2 years in order to get a license. And we are working with them to make sure they're on target for that. And if they're not on target for that, then we'll look at different things.
Okay.
Is that a fair statement for me?
Do you know how many teachers we have on provisional licenses right now?
It's almost half of your special education staff.
Okay.
Wow. Is it 10, I think? Are you really looking it up?
Yeah, I got it right here. I'm just gonna hit
Okay. And that's because we can't find people, right?
Yeah.
Well, the state can't find people.
Well, right.
Not just us.
Not just us, everybody can't find people.
Yes. I think that was it. Was that my last slide?
Do we need a motion for that? And do we
You
need
do. You do, because I'll make my auditors happy.
Do we do it now or when the budget, after the budget?
I think we should do that part now, because that's not part of the budget.
Okay, I move that we transfer the unassigned fund balance from the general fund to Medicaid
Yes.
in the sum of $303,356.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay. Any other discussion about that? Okay, all those in favor of Kevin's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you for that.
So 11 of our special educators are on provisional licenses, and about half of them, so they're about a half and half. Half of them are on their first year of
Okay.
provisional.
Yep.
So half of them.
Should hopefully be coming off.
Coming off, and then another half, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Could you clarify that, Deb? So the ones that just started with a special ed degree, they are on provisional licenses?
For 2 years.
Right, but so a lot of them,
So, okay.
like I was just looking at one of the plans, they already have a teaching degree, and they're getting another endorsement. Like, there's a lot of different.
Well, like you hired one, I know, because I did this student teacher supervision for them over at NESHAB. So she's brand new. She's on a provisional license?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Not all brand-new teachers are on a provisional license. Some of them may
Correct.
have had a special education license when they
Right.
were hired.
Okay. So the ones, that went through and got their degree in special ed
Right, but then sometimes I can think of a situation where someone has a license in K-6 or a middle school license, and then they decide that they wish to get another endorsement.
Okay.
And then they add that endorsement. They still then are on a provisional until they finish all of their coursework.
Brenda, do you know if that is a federal rule or a state rule?
I do not know for sure, but I do know that my friends, my other business managers, are seeing the same situation. I believe it is a federal rule, but I don't know for sure. I really don't.
Being that it's Medicaid funds and that is a federal program, it's probably a federal.
I'm not sure if provisional licensure, though, is a Vermont rule or not.
That's what
Is that the part you're asking about?
That's the part that I'm asking about.
Okay.
Because I would be very surprised, but I could be wrong, because there's lots of states that have alternatively certified teachers that utilize their Medicaid quite well. So it's worth looking into, and if that is a Vermont thing, then we need to lobby to make sure that it goes away.
Sure. Okay. So are you done?
I think so.
Wow.
Can you
Okay.
check?
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
yeah,
done.
then that was just your
But-
question. too. You guys have seen that, you don't want to.
All right.
All right, good night.
Nope. Not yet. Okay. So, are there any other budget? I know we've asked quite a few questions throughout the presentation. Are there any questions for Brenda or Renee at this time? Or Debbie?
Thanks for trying to work to pare it down even more.
Yeah.
This isn't a question, but I think that a lot of work went into presenting this. It's the clearest presentation I can remember. Yesterday's was the same, so both of those together. And I appreciate, I think it's a very responsible budget, and I appreciate the efforts that have been made to make it that way.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion at this time.
Do you want a motion to accept the budget as presented?
Or to approve the budget.
Approve the budget?
In the amount, usually she likes to hear numbers.
Right, okay.
Yeah, can you go back quite a few
I've got it
slides?
here. 13,
It
7,
could be right
29,
up there.
56.
Right.
like one of the first budget slides.
The
It's 13,720,000.
13,720,900.
I wish it was that. Sorry. I don't do big numbers either, I guess, anymore.
I do the big, you do the low.
I know, right? Oh, I thought those were cents on the end. No.
I move that we approve the RNESU budget in the amount of $13,720,956 for fiscal year 2026.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yes, I wanted to raise Brett's point because I think it's critically important. It's not a criticism of anyone in this room. I want to be explicit about that as possible. But we're doing a kind of pantomime where the public hasn't had a chance to examine this, and neither really have we. And I'm not very astute reading budgets, I'll admit that from the start, but there are people in the public who are and who are interested, and it's not right that they didn't get a chance to see this. And I'm blaming Montpelier. And I don't know how to make it known to Montpelier that this process is a bad one. And as to Lori's point about the public can vote the budgets down, public really can't vote the budget down based on if they're unhappy with the RNESU assessment. If Barstow votes it down and Neshabe passes it, we put the Barstow board in a position where they're going to be cutting teachers and, having to make all sorts of drastic decisions because they really can't touch this assessment. So there's a flaw in the system, and it's a serious one, and the result is that the public doesn't get to examine the RNESU budget and doesn't get to think about it seriously. So I'm going to vote no, even though I know that it puts us in a terrible position on the timeline if the majority of the board agrees with me. And I know I'm giving heartburn to the administration that doesn't deserve it. But I don't know any other way to protest these systemic flaws without voting no at this time.
Any other comments, questions?
Right, and this is all based on your timing of when we receive and how we're building stuff, correct? Is that,
Yeah.
like, as you get stuff from the state and numbers and, because this is a pretty typical timeline for most districts, correct?
So our timeline is harder because we're a supervisory union and not a single school district. That makes it a little bit more challenging. I will respectfully say two things. I will say, one, you're sending a message to Montpelier that they're not willing to hear or they're not interested in hearing. Much like when people say, I'm going to vote no on the budget because I'm mad at Montpelier, right? That's kind of what the protest vote is. And that's your right. The second thing I'm going to say is all but $137,000 of a reduction has been out there since November 20th. I did not get one call from anyone. It was online. It was discussed. There was no conversation. So, yeah, you didn't get the information until tonight because I was literally going through and prioritizing each of the meetings because, believe it or not, you don't have enough of me. I also worked until 10 o'clock Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So I think some of it is legitimately kind of when we get the information from the state. This year was very, I hate to overuse the word traumatic, but being up and down on a yo-yo with a long-term weighted average ADM was really challenging this year. And it really stopped me from being able to make some informed decisions and recommendations as we navigated the process.
I'm absolutely sympathetic with all of that. I am. In fact, probably more than I have been in the past, because I think I understand it better.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask a question of you, and you're absolutely, I want the truth. So, when we at OVUU do a budget, or do our budget, we start with every couple of weeks, and then when we get to January, we do every week until we prove it, right? So, what is the drop dead date that RNESU would have to approve their budget in order to allow OVUU and BUU to approve theirs. Do we have to give them 30 days? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. Or is it,
Let's be honest about the 30 days.
yeah, well, okay.
Christmas week is in there.
Right.
And so there are no days there, right?
Mhm.
There's no days that are happening then. So my schedule will be, I will come back on January 6th, and the agency may have updated information, CLAs may have come out, and I'll kind of run them through the formula, which, just so you know, because we have 8 towns, isn't a push of a button. There's a lot of manual calculations. I always seem to underestimate how long it's going to take, and that first Monday and Tuesday, I seem to be running out the door with the information in my hands that we just got and put through the process. So it's not 30 days, because at least 15 of them are, weekends and vacations and holidays. So it is not 30 days. The drop dead day that we have to actually adopt a budget for each of the towns is usually right around Martin Luther King Day. And I think by statute, I haven't looked it up, but I think by statute, the central office budget has to be adopted, I think by the 15th of January. We have a policy that says we'll adopt it by the 15th of December. We're already in violation of that policy. But adopting the Rutland Northeast budget, so once I get this number, I actually can't do anything until I get the long-term weighted average numbers. I mean, I can, I do, because I put some placeholders in for you. But then the last day of December, our policy says we're using the LTW ADM at that time. And that's how we're sharing the Rutland Northeast assessments. That's a few hours' work before it gets into each of the towns.
Sure. Okay.
Because every one of those funds are assessed a little bit differently.
Is it in our policy that we have to vote on town meeting day?
In a formation agreement, it says we have to vote on town meeting day. And the only way that you can change that is by a separate article on town meeting day for the future.
Because I know that Essex Westford does not vote on town meeting day. They vote like in April sometime.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, that didn't do anything for them last year. Because the legislature is never done until May 15th to June 1st. So unless you're going to go that late, you're never really going to have a definite yield approved by the legislature. Last year was an anomaly. Last year was a fiasco. The problem with going late is that to get property tax bills out in time by our 8 towns, we have to be 30 days past an adopted budget by the town, or by our voters, before we can submit our budgets to the state so that they can submit the information back to our town clerks to do property taxes. So, it's like you're tight here or you're tight there, and I would really like to keep our town clerks happy.
So then the only other question I have then is, does it even make sense to start this process sooner than November?
I've thought a lot about that over the last 2 years. And so much of it, budgeting longer doesn't always make for a better budget. If you budget with integrity to begin with.
Yeah.
So if you budget with, this is what we really need, versus this is what we've always had and we'd like to continue to have, right? Depends on where, and I have always felt with policy governance that you have directed the superintendent, and thus me, to not budget based on, this is what we've always had and we'd like to continue, but to actually be really accountable to our class sizes, our procedures, and our needs. So, but last year threw me for a loop. I didn't expect, I don't know if doing it sooner.
Sure.
In the past, we used to do it sooner, and it felt like a roller coaster ride to board members, especially when we were 11 independent districts, because some of them were really small. And when they're really small, and Barstow's feeling it today, I mean, I'm still worried about Barstow's budget, I'm not worried as much about Otter Valley's, but Barstow's looking at a 20% tax increase, right? So I'm still worried about Barstow's budget. When you're small, you feel these. And I remember in those years, we would send out a first draft in October, but I wouldn't know so much. I would be ultra conservative.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in December, it wouldn't look so bad. And then the board would be like, well, why'd you bring me on that roller coaster ride?
Right. Well, Sudbury and Whiting were like that. Leicester and Goshen.
All of them were. Those little small towns, they really went on a roller coaster ride.
Okay, well, that answers my question about, I mean, I hear Brett's, I hear Brett's argument that, he feels like this is quick done. But I don't know that, I don't think it is. So, not in actuality, not when you see the process that went into it. But, no, it's okay.
I don't disagree with anything that's been said, and one of the problems is that we're in a political environment right now where the state rep in Brandon, for example, got punished severely for voting for tax increases, and I think lost for that reason alone. We had 2 budgets rejected last year. We have a culture of suspicion of administration, both, federally, from federal on down. And if we have somebody as responsible and as astute as Brett saying, hey, I haven't seen this, I'm suspicious of it. I don't know if I don't want to put words in his mouth. He didn't say he was suspicious of it. I haven't seen this. What are our voters going to think?
Well, maybe as RNESU board members, we need to put it on the agenda on our first meeting in December and show them what the RNESU budget looks like and how it folds into OVUU, maybe.
Yeah, and I'm also fully appreciative that people don't show. We had 3 people show today, all of whom are really on top of things. But we live in a world where, rumors fly around on Facebook, and suddenly there are these, revolts, and we can't give voters the appearance that we're not keeping them informed, even if they don't care and don't want to be informed.
Okay.
So one of the things we could potentially do next year, or this board could do next year, is add an extra RNESU meeting the first week of December.
Mm-hmm.
So that way there's a meeting in November where it's presented the first time.
And we ask all of our board members to come to it.
Right. And then that way you have, we have that in December, and then if possibly as a first run, we still won't have all the data that we need that first week of December.
Right.
Because we're waiting on stuff. And so, but it would have to be very,
Well, maybe we see our first budget in November like we always have.
Mhm.
And then we present it, as RNESU board members, we present it to our member districts at their first meeting in December.
Yeah, and maybe we intentionally include the budget documents.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Instead of just saying they're out there.
Right. Okay. All right. So, any other discussion before I call a vote?
Okay, Brenda, you talked me into it for this year, so.
and people are able to, so I'm starting to schedule my January meetings at the different locations, including libraries and other places for after school.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as we have that schedule, I will invite the board members to join me so we can have conversations with taxpayers. And then I'll be
Great.
holding office hours at each of the schools weekly. Well, at least one school every week after the kids go home.
Great. Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to extend?
Well, the motion's already out there, so now we just have to vote.
To extend the meeting?
Oh, why? Is it 8 o'clock?
Oh, no, we have to
Oh, it's 7. That's right. It is 7.
We start at 5, right?
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, geez,
Well,
wow.
I know. Well, let's vote on this,
All right,
and
we
then we'll
started
talk
at
about
5:07,
that,
so
okay?
it's
Because there's really not much left on our budget.
Time just flies.
All right. So, all of those in favor of the budget as proposed of $1,720,956, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, all those opposed? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, we've already talked about our preschool configuration, so I'm not gonna,
There's also a link there if anybody needs it.
yep. And, we need to confirm our board budget honorariums. I believe on this board, we get $600 a person. And the board chair gets an additional, it's actually only.
Is it the three? Is this
No,
another
it's
300?
50% of the 600, so I get, oh yeah, so it is 300. God darn it. Oh, okay, it's been a long day.
Finance managers, accountants, it's
Yep.
way too complicated.
Woo. All right, so.
Leave it to the bookseller.
Does anyone want to change, I would make a recommendation that we not change those, but that's up to you guys.
Well, Congress just raised their salaries 40%.
Well, you know, that's Congress, that's not us.
Oh my God.
So,
It's under the budget anyway.
are we okay with keeping our honorariums the way they are? Yes?
I am.
Yes?
I am, certainly.
Agreed.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Agreed.
All right, so one of the things about our work plan is that our February meeting date is actually during school vacation. Normally, we keep that date unless, most of us are gonna be gone. I will not be gone, it'll be tax season. But the rest of you might be on a pretty vacation to wherever.
Well, I'm gonna be somewhere.
You are, will be somewhere else. What about the rest of us?
I may be working somewhere.
All right, so, why don't we, plan on having that the week before?
Oh.
The Wednesday before the 19th? Will that work on your
That works
schedule?
for me.
I think so.
For me.
Okay. I think that was the.
February 12th.
Yeah, February 12th. Isn't that Washington's birthday or something? No.
No, that's not
Okay.
good.
Okay.
President's Day?
So February 12th. All right, and if we need to change that again, we can. Anything on your superintendent report that we need to know about?
Let's see.
I'm not gonna extend the meeting, you think, because we're almost done.
It's
Okay.
all good, it's all good.
All right.
I just didn't know
Oh,
if we
just
needed
the,
to.
the PICUS report that I mentioned earlier, that the Future of Education Commission, and others are looking at is linked in there.
Okay.
Is linked on the RNE website?
It's linked in, like, if you go to the packet,
If you go to the agenda for RNESU, you'll see the superintendent report, and off of that, you can get to the PICUS report from there. There's a link. Yep.
I think that's it.
Okay. Perfect. We do need to have executive session tonight, but our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, January 15th, here at 5 p.m. Okay?
You don't need any of us.
No, I don't think so.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, you too.
Same to you.
Get some rest.